It's so awesome to have this community of awesome people that grown into this awesome thing. It's really cold. I'm just out here with no clothes on.
Are you a drummer?
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, that's the.
Oh, look at that. That's pretty cool.
And that's only part of it. The other part is in storage.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's awesome. Well, maybe we'll get into that. I really appreciate you doing this.
Oh, it sounds great. I was jumped at the chance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think I'm going to be able to tell some really cool stories, and I'm really excited about it. So.
Another therapist in town hit me up on Facebook and was like, "Oh, you live here too? Let's meet up and chit chat." I was like, "All right, when?" She goes, "Well, the 8th." I went, "Okay." And she's like, "Let's do it early because I got to go pick up my kids." And I was like, "Oh, that
Right.
works." And then it went on a little bit too long, and I think I had a few people at the clinic, and so I was going to run this afternoon at work, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to do it." And so then I was
Yeah.
like, "All right, if I don't run now, I'm not going to do it."
Nice. How far did you run?
I did 30 minutes, so I got over 3 miles.
Okay. I work downtown in downtown Memphis. So today I decided to go run, and I did 5 miles during lunch,
Mhm.
and it's really cool to be able to run down by the Mississippi River, and but it was raining today, and so it like literally stopped raining at 11:30 when I ran, and then started right as I was finishing, started raining again. It was like the perfect timing, which was
Oh,
awesome.
earlier this week, it was like 20 something in the morning.
Oh yes, yes.
Oh, and it was miserable, and I was like, "Screw it, I'm just gonna run the treadmill at work."
Yeah.
And so that's the great thing, I have a treadmill, so I was like, "All right, I'm gonna do a brand new treadmill too, brand
Yeah.
new." And so I just ran on that, but it gets kind of boring when you got a wall 2 feet in front of you.
Oh man,
So
we
I said,
have access to a treadmill at work upstairs, and I was actually on my way up to go run on the treadmill, and random lady got on the elevator, and she said, "I was thinking about going to run out in the rain. Do you think that's okay? Do you think that's weird?" And I was like, "No, that's not weird. It's just rain. Like, why would that be weird? In fact, I think I'll probably just suck it up and go run." So I ended up not doing the treadmill and just ended up going outside, and it turned out it didn't rain at all. So
yeah, I ran the
that was good.
Blues last year in the rain,
Oh really?
pouring rain the whole time.
Oh, that sucks, man.
But I was like, well, it's not like it's wet, it's like a rain, stop, be hot. It rained the whole time. I was like, "Ah, screw it."
Oh man. I love that. I love that. Did you run the marathon or the half
Mhm.
or? Okay. I love that marathon. I really want to go back one day. I think I've done it twice, but it's a really good race.
Well, Blue Cross dropped it.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. And Continental Tire does it, so
Okay.
it's not as big, and the metal is like that
Oh,
big.
okay.
It's a lot smaller, so it's not as big of a deal as it used to be.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. When I got some really cool uh, medals from that one, for sure.
Yeah, I ran Dallas this year. That was pretty neat.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, let's just get into it. So I guess how many marathons have you ran? Like, where are we today? You're a multiple marathon man.
Yes, 4 marathons. Of course, St. Jude twice,
Okay.
because being from Memphis, you got to do St. Jude,
You have to,
and
yeah.
then being from Mississippi, had to go down and do the Blues, and then since I
Right.
moved here to Dallas, I said last year I was like, "All right, you know what? Let me sign up and do one in Texas." So I
Okay.
signed up and did the Dallas Marathon on barely any training, but I survived.
Nice. And so in addition to running, you're a physical therapist,
Hmm.
right? And so do you have your own practice, or where do you work? Where do you work at?
So currently I am with a company called Premise Health. And what Premise does is they work with individual employers, and they call them clients. And they set up health centers with it. So lo and behold, I'm from Memphis. And so who is our client? FedEx.
Right. Yeah.
So I can't escape
Right.
Memphis no matter where I go. So I work in a health center, and so so all I see is FedEx employees.
Okay. That's interesting. So you haven't always been a physical therapist, and you haven't always been a marathon runner. So where does this story start at? Like, what were you doing before you decided to be a physical therapist?
So the whole story of how I became that. So I was an athlete all through high school and college.
Right.
And in high school, I actually broke my leg and have hardware in it. It had to rehab back from it. I never
How
went
did you
with it.
how did you break your leg?
So this is the bad thing. I was the starting center senior year, first game, 5 minutes before halftime. My own teammate leg whipped me, and
No way.
and getting blocked, it twisted my leg and it broke it.
Oh man.
So I didn't even make it through my first game senior year.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yep. So I rehabbed back from that with the athletic trainer, and I was like, man, this stuff is pretty cool. Like how you work with somebody and get them back. And I'm
Right.
like, oh, this is pretty interesting. But I like the other aspect of like strength and conditioning on how you can get somebody stronger and how you get somebody faster, and they can do all these things. So I like that stuff. And then when I went to college, I went to Mississippi State first, and had a really, really good athletic trainer there. And he was a very active recovery guy. So he wanted, if you got injured, he didn't stick you on ice and stem. He's like, no, we're going to get you up moving. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do these really dynamic warm ups. And I was like, man, I got a lot faster. I got a lot more flexible. It was the only time in my life I've ever been able to do the splits.
Oh wow.
And like I had got to that point. And so I really, really got interested in it. But he left, and he went to another school, and I was an engineer originally, a chemical engineer, and I hated it.
Uh-huh.
Hated being a chemical engineer. So I said, well, what's better than being a chemical engineer? How about you own the company that hires the chemical engineers? So I went to business school.
Okay.
So so then I switched and went to Ole Miss, and while I was there, I realized I don't want to go into business. I like exercise, and I like training, and I like that. So I started trying to do personal training, but it was really hard to get into it.
Yeah.
And
Were you doing that? Were you doing that in Oxford at Ole Miss or?
no, I was actually doing an Olive Branch.
Okay.
Olympic Family Fitness, and those are
Okay.
people like remember
Oh
that.
yeah. Okay, I remember
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
I was over there, and there was a little one in Germantown. I was working there a little bit, and it really wasn't what I thought, and
Uh-huh.
just did not like it whatsoever. And my mom is an occupational therapist, and she said, "Well, why don't you look at physical therapy?" I said, "Okay, let me look at this." And so this is where the story kind of gets crazy. So I look around all the schools in the Mid-South area. So UT Memphis, University of Mississippi in Jackson, Central Arkansas. Start looking at all those schools and trying to get in their PT program. Well, I missed the deadline for them. And they also had a lot of prerequisites that I never took because of going to business school. So I didn't take a lot of sciences. So I said, oh, well, to go to these schools, I got to put in all this extra schoolwork. So I went ahead and did that, and was starting on that. Then my parents happened to move to California and live in Southern California. And there was a small school there, California State University Northridge. And they said, oh, there's a PT program there. Why don't you look at it? Okay, we went to visit them, and I contacted the school and talked to the department head, and they said, yeah, sure, you can come out for a tour. And it was only like 4 classrooms that they took me around in. They didn't really have a big. It wasn't really really big, and so I said, well, how can I look at applying? And the only really reason I was able to apply, it was that their deadline, instead of it being in October and November like everywhere else, it was February. I said, oh, perfect, gives me plenty of time to get in. And also the prerequisites were a little different. So I had satisfied most of them, and I said, well, I could take the rest of them. They said, okay, that works, but you had to take the GRE. And
What's the GRE?
it's it's like graduate requirement exam or something like that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So if you're going to go to grad school, you have to take the GRE.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a English and a writing portion and a math portion to it. The scoring is completely different now than it was then.
Mm.
And so most grad schools have a minimum that they want. And this school in Northridge didn't have a minimum, but they said, we like for you to get 1,000 on it. I said, okay. So I scheduled to take it in January on a Friday. I'll never forget that, on a Friday. Woke up that Friday morning, it had snowed. So back home, and if it snows, shuts everything down.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I was gonna go take it at Memphis, University of Memphis, and I'm trying to call the testing center, and I'm trying to call to see like, are they open, and no one's answering it. And I got on the highway, and I made it like a mile down the highway, and I was like, I'm not even gonna make it. So I went back home. I called the GRE people. I said, look, they canceled it because of snow. And they went, why? And they said, well, we're in New Jersey. That's nothing. I said, no, we're in the South. We don't have any of these snow trucks or plows or salt. Right. Oh, okay. Well, let's move it to next week. Okay, perfect. Move it to the next week. Well, that moving it to the next week delayed me getting my scores. So when I took the exam, it just popped on there what I got, which I got the 1,000. I was so happy that I got the 1,000. And when I filled up my application and mailed it in, I just wrote it on there. And just stuck it in the mail and just mailed it. I was like, oh, here we go. Well, I got a call not too long after the deadline going, we don't have your score paperwork for your GRE. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, there was a delay due to that. They're like, okay, well, can you fax it to us? And I said, sure. So I faxed it to them. And then about April, I got a letter in the mail, and it said, thank you for applying, but you were number 24 on the wait list, and they only take 40 students. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't get in, but that's fine. I'll take some more of the prerequisites for the other schools, and I'll get in. I'll get in. So I went to Northwest, and I signed up for general biology, and I remember I signed up for the class and I bought the book, and they pull that thing on you. Well, we're not using this book next year, so you can't sell it back. I'm like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I get home from the second day of that class. The department head called me and said, hi, this is Dr. So-and-so with Cal State Northridge PT department. We'd like to offer you a spot. Would you like it?
Oh, look at that. That's awesome.
I didn't even bat an eye. I said, yes.
Yeah.
Didn't even think about it. I said, yep, I want it. Great. We'll send you your paperwork. Hung up the phone, and I'm like, holy cow, I just got in. And I just couldn't believe it. So then I called all my friends and family. I was like, oh, I got into PT school. Then I was like, well, crud, now I got to pack up and move to California.
Right. Oh man, that's a culture shock, probably.
So that was a huge thing. And then going 1,800 miles away to that school, and completely different culture, completely different atmosphere.
Oh my gosh.
But
especially from Northwest Mississippi versus California. That's a big
think that
difference.
Helped me. I honestly think that it helped. They're like, okay, I think we're taking too many California people. We gotta like broaden this out. Well, let's take the hillbilly from Mississippi. So
hey, that could be a valid reason. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But your parents lived out there, so did you go live with them and
yes,
go to school?
This is the other crazy thing. So I moved there. They had bought a house, moved there. Then my dad quit his job and moved back. So after me being there with him for 6 weeks, left his job, went back
Oh
home.
man, wow.
But it was kind of cool. I had this whole house to myself,
Okay, so
and
he didn't just leave you there to be like,
yeah,
hey, go find some place to stay.
just like
Yeah.
I didn't have to find apartments. It was like, oh, I'll just had my car. Okay, just drive to school.
Okay, well, that's
And,
pretty cool. How old are you at this point?
oh my gosh, I was 24, 25 at the time. I was a little
Okay.
older when I
Yeah.
went.
That's pretty cool to be 24. You're in college in California, coming from Northwest Mississippi. I mean, that's pretty awesome, actually.
Oh yeah, and it's always fun. Like I moved around. I lived in Chicago for a little while, and I lived in California. And when you're the outsider that comes in, like you want to experience everything, so you make friends, and then they
Right.
get to go experience stuff that they're like, I've never done this. I've lived here my whole life.
Right.
So you're like, come on, let's go, and just go hang out,
That's
go do
awesome.
this. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So then what? You're in California, going to school and doing your thing, and then what happens?
Yeah. So I did 3 years of PT school, graduated, and moved back home to Mississippi. That was kind of the plan the whole time. I got married while I was in PT school, and
In California,
well,
you got
back
married?
home in Mississippi. So I got my home
Okay.
married in Mississippi and moved back, and then we both went out there,
Okay.
and I was kind of seeing, am I going to get offered a job out here? And I was away from my whole family, so I was kind of looking both ways, but then nothing was coming in, from California, so no job offers, nothing. So I said, all right, I'm going to go back. So packed up the car and drove across the country.
Nice.
So I've driven to California twice and once back. So drove back.
I feel like everybody should drive out west at least one time in their life.
Oh,
Because it's such a. I drove. One of my friends got married when I was super young, like probably 20, 23 or something like that, and we drove. He married a girl from Arizona, and so we had to drive from Memphis to Arizona to go to his wedding. And I mean, we literally drove like we didn't have any money, so we just drove straight there because we didn't have any money to stop at a hotel. So we like shifted drivers. Like one person would drive for like 8 hours and another person would just switch, and then we just rotate. And when you got tired, you'd go to sleep. It's pretty awesome. I mean, but anyway, it's pretty cool experience to drive.
Trees, and I always said you get to Oklahoma, and I said, man, I have never seen land so flat. It's like you watch your dog run away for like 3 days. Like it is flat.
Right, for sure. So you're married and you moved back home.
Mm-hmm.
And then what'd you do when you got back?
I started working low clinic, Memphis Orthopedic Group. You're probably familiar with them around there.
Yeah.
And it was funny because the clinic that it opened was right on Riverdale. You probably passed, Riverdale and Shelby Drive.
Yeah.
That office right there. I remember as a kid because we used to go to that Walmart that was right over there on Shelby Drive.
Yeah, right.
And I just drove by that building all the time as a kid.
Yeah.
And never thought I would work there. Never ever thought I would work there.
Uh-huh.
And that was my first job was in that as a therapist.
Okay.
So I worked there for 2 years, and then I was looking at moving up. So that was the next thing is I wanted to move up in my career. I said I want to run a clinic. I feel like I'm ready for that. And unfortunately, when I was there was just no opportunity. And it wasn't any fault of the company or anything. They had 5 clinics and they had 5 directors, and there just wasn't a job. So Physiotherapy Associates approached me and offered me a position over in South Haven. And it's a bunch of deliberation, and I accepted the position and went over there. And I worked there for 5 years through a merger with Select Medical, and I actually ended up running 2 of their clinics. One, the one in South Haven, and the one up on Nankana at the OcuMed office. So I ran both of those. Did very well at the South Haven clinic. We grew that clinic had a huge growth in both new patients and visits. So really just blew up that clinic and made it one of the better performing ones with the company and in the area. But then kind of got the bug again to wanted to expand my career out again, and got a job offer with another company, and it was going to move me to Indiana. So I moved to Indiana early last year, but just did not like it.
Okay.
Did not like it.
So do you have any kids at this point?
Yes, I had two kids. So I had my first daughter when I got my first job,
Uh-huh.
and so then I had my second daughter when I got my second job.
Okay.
So Pete, so it was
And
fun.
so you're just uprooting everybody and going, hey, we're going to Indiana and
Well, that was the crazy thing. So my oldest was in first grade, and I said, well, let's let her stay here.
Mhm.
Let's let her stay here. Let her finish her year out. I'll go get settled, and we'll make a decision from there. But as it went on, I just wasn't feeling it with the company, and I also did the diploma program with the McKinsey Institute. So so that whole certification and the whole training, there is 5 courses, A, B, C, D, E, and then after you take those, you can take a certification exam. And it's a treatment method, an assessment method, and it just kind of helps you become an overall better therapist. And so the diploma program is the next level up from that, and that's the highest level that you can get with the institute. And so I had completed the theoretical component the year before, and I had told them when I went on, I said, hey, I have to leave and I have to go down to Austin, Texas for 9 weeks and work. And you have to go to a clinic down there, and that's all you do is you're treating patients all day, using the method. We had discussions at lunch. We had case studies we had to take home. So that was a ton of work.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, and so I had told the company, I said, "Oh, well, I'm going." I'm going to this, and they said, "Okay, that's fine, that's fine." And when I left, I said, "Okay, well, I'm not really feeling it." They hadn't moved up there yet, and then I fell in love with Texas. I was like, "Man, Texas is awesome."
I've heard that. Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, especially Austin. Austin is
Yeah. Yeah.
and it had a great time in Austin. And I said, I don't want to go back to Indiana. It snows too much. It's too cold. And it snowed on Easter up there.
Oh my gosh.
It snowed on Easter and the first day of spring. And I'm not talking like a little dusting, like
Like a lot of snow. Yeah.
snow. And again, being from the South, I'm like, I'm not all about this. I ain't about this. Granted, for living for Chicago for 2 years, but as I got older, I was like, I am not doing this. I am not doing shovel snow and doing all that.
Yeah.
So I resigned from there. I was like, I'm going, and moved up to the Dallas area and found the job with Permis and decided to stay here.
Okay. So that's where you are right now? So you're in Dallas right now?
Yeah, just outside a little town called Capel.
Okay, gotcha. Wow, what a journey, huh?
Yeah.
So you were, I want to get it right. So you were in your family and everything. You said your daughter was in first grade, and where was that at?
They're in Olive Branch.
Okay, so you were still in Mississippi.
Yeah. So we were still in Mississippi, and when
Uh-huh.
I got that offer, and that was in January of last year.
Okay.
So I left. I ran the blues. That was actually the reason of why I ran the blues marathon.
Okay.
Was, as I said, I got to say goodbye to Mississippi.
Uh-huh.
So I went down there and I ran that marathon, and it was fun. I think I left my job that Thursday, had like a day or two off, and then drove down to Jackson, ran the marathon, spent the night, drove back, loaded up my car, and drove to Chicago, like all within like a week or 5 days.
Wow.
It was something like that. And so and did that. So I was away from all of them for about 6 months.
That's tough.
Yeah, that was quite a long time.
Yeah. So what is your day? What is your day like right now? Like you get up and go and see patients all day, and then you just finished a run early this evening. Do you run every day, or what kinds of things do you get into on the
Ah,
daily?
so that's the crazy thing that I'm trying to do. So I had this weird idea not too long ago about I was reading something about like ancient humans and
Okay.
about how like ancient humans they were extremely strong and they're extremely fast, that they could run with a sprinter speed on marathon distances, But I mean, granted, that's what they did their whole lives, and so
Okay.
I was like,
Where were you reading that at?
oh, it was something online
Oh,
about
okay.
I
All right.
and you start clicking on
Oh, I
something,
know. Yeah, I know for
it
sure.
leads you down this rabbit hole, and I was sort of thinking, it's like, is that really possible for somebody to not only have really good cardiovascular endurance, but also to be pretty strong? And I was like, okay, let me see if I can do that.
Hmm.
So I started running about 7 years ago. I got into doing that because I had gained a bunch of weight, and I was like, I can't keep going, especially being a therapist and being
Well,
overweight.
yeah, I was actually going to ask you that. Like, do you try to keep up your health because it's kind of like being a coach. You can't be like a fat dude trying to be,
Yeah, and I
yeah,
always saw that as a hard thing. Like people say, like you don't want a fat doctor, you don't want an overweight trainer,
right,
and so I said I don't want to be preaching health and things to somebody, and I'm not practicing what I preach.
right.
So I started running, um, and dropped a bunch of weight. And then several years later, I changed up my diet and I lost more weight. And then I got more and more into running races, and it kind of gradually increased the distances from 5Ks. Did the road race series, and then I finally broke down. I was like, all right, let me do a marathon. I got to do one, so ended up doing that. But about 2-ish years ago, I powerlifted one time in high school. A football team, we would train and we compete in the powerlifting meet with some other high
Okay.
schools. And I said, well, you know what? Let me just get back into that. So it could give me something to do because I kind of know that. So I just reached out to a friend who's a powerlifter, and a friend's brother is a elite powerlifter. So I kind of reached out to both of them and just kind of got workout plans from them. And I said, all right, well, let me start lifting weights and adding weights training to it because I was getting injured occasionally with running. And I said, well, if I start strength training, that should help me with the injuries. And I just remember at one time being really strong when I was on the track team in college, and then going there and it can't even do any, barely any of the same thing. It's like
Right,
I got on the incline bench and I put tens on each side. So that's 65 pounds. And I was struggling with doing that. And I'm like,
right,
oh my gosh, I used to do so much more. Like, oh my
right.
gosh. I was like, but you're not ego lifting. You got to start somewhere. Um, so got into that, and I've done the dumb, crazy thing as I competed on a powerlifting meet on a Saturday, then got up on Sunday and ran a half marathon.
Okay.
So yeah, it did. Yeah, I had pretty good at the powerlifting meet, and then like what was my time at the half was like 2:17 or something. So I think
Oh,
was
well,
that's
that's not bad
pretty
at
good.
all. No.
And it was like, I am never doing this again. This is so stupid. Why in the world did you do that? It's funny to tell people that now.
Hmm.
Um, but then it was also funny to be in the powerlifting, the guys get out of breath standing up, walking to the platform. And it's like, well, at least I can
Okay.
outrun them. So
Right, for sure.
but yeah, so like the stuff I do now, um, I'll try to wake up early and go for a run. So I try to do at least 30 minutes every day of cardio.
Oh, okay.
So I try to get out and run. And the good thing again about being in the South, we have good weather most of the
Yeah,
year.
for sure.
So that's the benefit. And then especially Texas, you don't get a lot of cold. And then the extreme heat, you do have to wait and go in the evening.
In the South, you either have to go early in the morning or late at night. So,
But I think there's a big benefit if you run in the extreme heat and humidity down here. That toughens you up.
I do agree with that for sure. Yeah.
So like if you can run through some Mississippi humidity or some of the southern humidity, you can run about anywhere.
I have told people on many occasions that I think that because I've had a lot of athletes come to me and go, man, it's in the middle of summer, and they're like, I'm just sucking it up. Like nothing is, this running is horrible. And I'm like, just wait until fall, and you're gonna crush it because, you're powering through this nasty humidity, and then in the fall, you're gonna feel awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. But so now what I do is I get up, I run, then I go to work. I drop my daughter off. That's why I drop one daughter off, and then go to work. And the good thing again about where I work, if I miss my morning run, like it's too cold, or just slept in, I can at least run on the treadmill at work. So
right.
So that is nice. But then get off of work, come home, try to get a meal in, and then go to the gym. So that's kind of the hard thing. And people were just like amazed, like, how in the world do you do that? And I'm like, it's not easy, and it takes several years of doing that constantly that you finally get used to it, and then it's like, okay, I can do that. And there's still days like, man, I really don't want to go to the gym. And I was thinking that last night, man, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to go to the gym. And I think, you know what? Have you ever regretted doing a workout? No, but you regret a lot often when you don't go do it. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna go. And I actually had a really good night last night too. So that was kind of the benefit. That was kind of the good thing.
I mean, you really just have to make yourself go. The hardest part is just when you get into that place where you're like, I don't really want to go. If you just ignore it and go, once, like you said, once you're there, you are never gonna regret it.
Yeah.
Ever.
and I've done that a few times. Like you wake up and it's like, oh, I'm gonna go run. And then it's like, no, it's cold. No, it's this. No, it's that. And then you try to lay back down and go to sleep. But then you end up tossing and turning for 30 minutes. And then you get up anyway. And you think, man, I could have just went and did it and be done.
Yeah.
And I think I've done that a few times to just like get up and done it. I was like, you know what? I'll just take a nap at lunch. And I've done just like go into a room, shut the door. That's another great thing. We got treatment tables. I just lay on a treatment table, take a nap.
Oh, man. Yeah. So where did the drumming come in? I have to know.
Oh, so that is something I've done for a long time.
Okay.
My dad is a drummer, and he started playing when he was a kid.
Okay.
Don't know how he got into it, but he was in the band and did all that. My dad's not athletic whatsoever.
Okay.
And he did drumming, and then I grew up, so I grew up around musicians. And listening to music and all that. So I remember one day I finally just went to him. I was like, Dad, will you teach me how to play drums? And I was probably 12, 13 years old. He's like, okay, yeah, come on. And I just want to know what it was. I joined the band in 7th grade.
Right.
That's what the thing was. I joined the band in 7th grade, and I said, all right, Dad, will you teach me? And he's like, okay, this is how you do a double stroke roll. And so he taught me how to hold it and how to get it to bounce. He said, just practice that. So I just practice that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I was tapping on like everything that you could find. It was just tapping on it and played a little bit. And then I had some friends that were guitar players in school, and they were wanting to start a band. So I went to my dad. I was like, Dad, can you teach me how to play a drum set? He goes, okay, yeah, I can teach you how to do that. So of course, he's got a drum set. So I sit down at this thing. He goes, all right, here's a beat I want you to learn. And it was this really simple beat. He's like, all right, just practice that. Okay. Okay. And he's like, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's like, that's all you got to count in your head as you go. That's what you got to do. Okay. And then after you do that 4 times, throw in a fill. And he'd be like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And he'd go back to it. He's like, just practice that. And then once you got it down, just listen to CDs or your tapes and just practice. That's the only thing he
Okay.
ever said to me. And it was like, okay. So then when I got it down, I would just, any CD I had or they had, I would just put headphones on. And
Right.
back in the day, had a the big old stereo. You had to lug the big stereo over and stick it by it, and just play along to the CDs and stuff like that. And so I've played in a few bands over the years, and kind of would fall in and out of it at times.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so now I collect them. I have that's what mainly those are the collectible.
You collect drum set, like complete sets, or you just collect?
Sometimes the sets, and then sometimes just pieces of them, or
Okay.
like the memorabilia of it. So it's a whole history behind them as well, and that gets pretty interesting in and of itself. Is just the history of how these companies came about, and like where the modern drumming came from and things like that. So
Uh-huh.
interesting little thing. So like the old Nickelodeons, drummers were the ones who did the sound effects.
Okay.
And there was a company called Ludwig, and you've probably seen their drums. They're
Yeah,
still
yeah.
around. So to be a drum, so most places, so like any kind of restaurant or saloon or performance thing, you had to have musicians, and the drum set itself did not exist. So you had 2 guys. You had one playing the bass drum, one playing the snare drum.
Oh.
So this guy, William Ludwig Sr., he said, well, let's, what if I take the bass drum and I put that on the floor and I make a pedal you play with your foot? So he did that. Well, he was hated because you know why?
Because all of a sudden one guy doesn't have a job.
Exactly. So half of all these people just got fired
Right.
because of this one device, and he was hated. And I've met the grandson, and he talks about, yes, my grandfather was hated for many years because he took away so many jobs. But it was neat, and the memorabilia is sound effect stuff. So I find this stuff just like wherever I can, thrift shops, online. I mean, like my dad has a lot of, because I usually end up giving it to him for a gift. I got bird calls, little bird whistles. That's the crazy thing. So you think watching a movie, and if you're watching a silent movie, they put this little thing. It's got water in it. You blow into it. It sounds just like a bird. Slide whistles. They have little things that make gunshots. The coolest thing, and if I could ever find one, I would buy it. It's like a train box, and it's this wooden box, and it has springs inside of it, and it's got this metal rod, and it sounds exactly like a train. So when you start this, so when the train starts, you just drag that thing across it. It goes like ch 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 ch, and it's
Oh, wow.
you
Okay.
close your eyes when somebody does it. It sounds like a train is starting, and the whistles we'll do the whistles, and you listen to this, and you're like, I cannot believe that you created that sound
So
from this thing.
right. What I'm imagining in my head is a bunch of people watching a silent movie
Mm-hmm.
with all these people and these drummers and these whistles and all these
Yeah.
weird things making the sound effects for the
Yeah,
movie,
and
because the movie didn't have sound in it.
Yeah, and they're watching this, and they're doing these things right on the time. And my kids think it's just like the coolest stuff to play with.
Well, it is.
Yeah, because
Probably, yeah.
it just makes all these weird sounds, and they're like, and they don't think anything about it. And I'm like, yeah, this thing is probably from the early 1900s.
Wow.
And so I mean, and then there's the whole thing of the era of World War II. There was a whole little special area of drums where they're mainly, like, all the hardware is made out of wood because they had to ration metal for the war.
Oh, yeah.
So
Okay.
there's a 3-year period they made all, like, the drums could only have 10% metal. And the 10% was part of the badge, the tension rods, and the little part where the tension rod went in. So, and the screws. So all the rest of it had to be wood. And any of them that survived to today are just amazing because they said even like the bass drum pedals in the stands were wood, and they said they broke all the time. And they said once the war is over and all these people could start buying metal ones, they burned them. They just threw them away. Like, I don't want that crap anymore. And now they're collectible.
Yep.
And you just don't find them. So.
Well, what's the most interesting piece that you have there?
Oh my gosh, what is the most?
Like, what's your favorite one?
Oh my gosh, where's my favorite one? Oh, it may be. I think it may be a little bit of a toss-up. So, well, I got my first snare drum. I got the first snare drum I've ever owned. I don't have the drum set anymore because my brother left that at somebody's house. I still got the snare drum.
Okay.
It's a piece of junk,
Right.
but it's from my first, so I have.
Yeah, that's sentimental. Yeah.
I got. Let's see, what is it? Oh, I got the first one I ever restored.
Okay.
And that one was a pretty cool. I found the shell at an antique shop, and it was weird. So like when you like stuff, you can just see it.
Yeah.
And so we were just walking through the thrift shop, and I see the shell. I'm like, I got to go pick up that thing. So I walk over, and I spent like $20 on it, and took it home, and I'm just like admiring this thing. And I polished the wood on it, and I had it looking good. Well, then I started doing research. I was like, all right, I got to restore this thing back, and found a guy online and bought all the hardware for it and restored this thing all the way back to how it would look when it was original. Now, granted, it sounds like garbage. I don't play it because the drums of the era were very dry, and also the wood, the moisture in the wood and all that. So
all right.
They sound, but they're collectible. And then the other funny one, do I have it? Oh yeah, I got it over there. My mom found it for me, and my dad collects too. So my dad collects it. And the funny story on that was my mom went to a thrift shop in Colorado, and she sends me a picture. Hey Matt, they got this really old drum set. Do you want it? I'll buy it and you just pay me back. And so she sent me this picture, and I look at it. I was like, oh yeah, pick it up. It's an old Pearl drum set, like the Pearl drums now. And I said, oh yeah, Mom. I said, get it, because it's only going to get older. My dad's like, oh, it's a piece of junk. Okay. Well, the guy that buys it, that sells it to her, he's like, oh, take this old drum with you too. And my dad looks at it. It's an old snare drum. My dad looks at it. He's like, oh, that's got extra hardware. It's been, it takes down the value if they have extra holes in it or stuff is broken. He's like, oh, that's a piece of junk. Someone else does that. I was like, okay, whatever, Dad. So when I finally get a hold of it, I start taking it apart. I find out this thing is a 1947 Gretsch Broadcaster.
Wow.
Which is not a super common one, and it's probably worth $800 or $900. And the guy just gave it to me. And my dad's like, oh, maybe it was kind of good. I was like, nope, it's mine now. You didn't want it.
Yeah, that's staying with me. Thanks.
So I've had
that's
that
awesome.
thing, and I'm like, yeah, so that's one of the other favorite. And the thing is heavy. That's the great thing. It is so heavy.
Huh. Wow.
And so there's neat to look at. There's like collection pieces. I was like,
sure.
I was like, yeah, that's this one, this built in this and that.
Yeah.
Like you play it, sometimes, but I just like looking at them.
Right. Well, I like to look, we're coming to the close of this, but I like to leave people with some nuggets. So like, what about books? Like your favorite books? If you like, you're obviously a very successful person. What are a couple of books that have influenced you, or even outside of that? Like what drives you? Like if you could leave a couple of tips for people, what would they be?
Well, an interesting thing, and I know in the Lift Heavy Run Long, it's been a big talk, was David Goggins' book. Like, I have an Audible account because I don't sit down a lot to read, and then usually by the time I sit down, I get that. But I figured, hey, I drive, I might as well listen to it. I could not turn that book off.
Right.
And in the audio version, I would say is a little bit better because he interjects with a few things.
Yeah. Does he read it? Okay.
No, another guy reads it.
Okay.
But they'll take breaks at certain points, and then David himself will talk.
Oh, that's cool.
Backstory.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, like somebody who went through so much.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we all think that we go through a lot, but to hear that guy's story and this like, holy cow,
It really is
like,
amazing. Yeah.
like, wow, like just didn't give up whatsoever. And I'm probably gonna re-listen to it again because
Yeah.
I mean just to listen to everything from his childhood through going through the Navy SEALs and doing the ultra running, and I was like, wow, like that, like oh yes. So that was good. Another book, it's another audio book. It's called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
And it's pretty interesting. It's Napoleon Hill, quote unquote, interviewing the devil. And again, I like the audio because the driving is thrown in there. And he's supposedly interviewing the devil. And this book was written in the 1930s.
Okay.
But his wife hid the manuscript away because of having the devil in it, and it's the perception of that. So she hid the book away. But if you listen to that book, a lot of the things that they talk about it, you can apply it today.
Right.
I mean, from everything about how it's kind of how the media can be used to manipulate and control people. He talks about eating right and not smoking and not drinking. And which, at that time, that really wasn't talked about.
Right.
He talks about, you'll find what you want to do and go for it. And just not giving up. And I've listened to that book probably 4 times. And it's a long one, but I love it every time I
Nice.
listen to it. And then the things that it just talks about, like, having a definite of purpose. So if it's like, I want to do this, and so you're not wandering aimlessly. So in your job, or, I want to go, it's like, somebody, I want to run a marathon. And I hear that a lot from people. And I've had patients tell me that their goals, I want to run a marathon. Oh man, that's great.
Right.
And you talk to them all the time saying, well, have you started? Well, no, not yet. Well, when do you want to do it? Well, I just don't really, well, you're not going to do it. And if it's going to say, I want to do this, you got to take, at least go put your running shoes on and run to your mailbox and back.
Right.
At least you're taking those steps. So listen to that, just having this, like, I want to do this. This is the way that I got to determine to go to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to me. It's I honestly, I really do appreciate it, and thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I hope that everything goes great for you, and I'll talk to you again soon, hopefully.
Oh yeah, thank you.
All right.